This incident just occurred to me less than 40 minutes ago. Today hasn't been the greatest day for me, but I'm determined to turn it around and feel better by being productive. So I decide to head to the bank. Luckily, they have extended hours, and I urgently need to take care of some paperwork. As I reach a street corner, I position myself close to the edge, ensuring that I'm not obstructing anyone on the sidewalk or blocking anyone trying to cross. I have my favorite feel, good music playing in my ears, engrossed in my phone and not fully aware of my surroundings. However, I am certain that I'm not causing any inconvenience or obstructing anyone. I'm just momentarily tuning out the world as I wait for the light to change. Out of nowhere, I feel a jolt on my leg. I turn around to find an elderly lady with a loaded dolly carrying bags, empty water jugs, those big ones for water coolers, and various other items. I can't recall the specifics, as they aren't important. What matters is that the lady is standing there, looking at me expectantly. I remove one of my headphones and ask, "Can I help you?" The lady, whom we'll refer to as Karen, says, "You should be careful and take your headphones out." Internally, I think, well, I suppose that's fair. It's a slightly sketchy area. It's odd, though, that she's so focused on my safety. Aloud, I respond to Karen. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm perfectly fine. I can take care of myself." Before I can finish speaking, Karen interrupts me, and this is when I realize she's a Karen. Karen, visibly irritated, exclaims, "Well, you can't hear anything. I tried numerous times to get your attention and make you move." Perplexed, I gaze at the wide expanse of sidewalk she still has available to her, easily double the width of her dolly. I say, "Ma'am, you didn't have to bump into me. You could have simply gone around." At this point, it's worth mentioning that even if her dolly was challenging to maneuver, she had more than enough space to make a wide turn without hitting me. Karen huffs and retorts, "I didn't want to have to go around you." That was the last straw for me, and I couldn't hold back my frustration. "Wait a minute. So, instead of going around, you chose to bother me. Seriously? There's ample space on the sidewalk for both of us." Karen, now even more agitated, replies, "Well, you couldn't hear anything." In my mind, I sarcastically think, "No kidding. It's because I don't want to engage with people like you." Fortunately, the traffic light changes, and I roll my eyes before walking away. I shout over my shoulder, "You have some serious issues, lady." She mumbles something incoherent at me and smoothly turns her dolly up the sidewalk. I can't help but wonder what on earth just happened. She had no trouble maneuvering her dolly, and the entire interaction could have been avoided. This incident took place in 2013 when I was over 30 years old and had returned to school to complete my CE degree. It was the Friday before finals week, marking the end of my last semester. The campus was situated in a low-income area with a less educated population, which I rarely visited. That morning, around 7:30 a.m., I entered a gas station called Square L at that time. They had just started selling alcohol for the day since the county had a dry period between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. I picked up 2 large packs of inexpensive drinks, intending to stock up for a small study party with my friends later on campus. As I approached the register, I noticed the person behind it eyeing me suspiciously. I placed the drinks on the counter, assuming there wouldn't be any issues. However, the cashier informed me that I couldn't buy them. I calmly explained that it was past 7 a.m. and there shouldn't be a problem. The manager, distinguishable by their dress shirt instead of a polo, leaned over and instructed the cashier to check my ID. Reluctantly, she asked me for it. Although I didn't appreciate the hassle, I agreed and realized my ID was in my car. I offered to retrieve it and she allowed me to do so. Hurriedly, I dashed out to my car, grabbed my wallet from my book bag, and returned to the store. I presented my ID to the cashier, who took a quick glance at it, snickered, snapped it in half, and tossed it in the trash. She then ordered me to leave the store. Stunned, I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The manager threatened to call the police and have me arrested if I didn't leave. Feeling bewildered, I mumbled something in response and decided to comply with the second half of their demand. I made my way to my car, grabbed my phone, and dialed the non-emergency police line. I reported the incident, providing them with the store's address, and ended the call. Then I returned to the store and patiently waited inside. The manager, realizing that the police were on their way, hastily exited the store. I followed suit, and when the officers arrived, the manager immediately pointed at me, rattling off accusations about my fake ID. However, the cop disregarded her claims and asked for my side of the story. After taking statements from the manager and the cashier, the officer requested that my ID be retrieved from the trash. He examined it, confirmed my identity and clean record, and returned the 2 pieces of the broken ID to me. Up to this point, the officer had only asked for necessary information. However, he then asked me to accompany him for a conversation outside, which made me slightly anxious. Outside, he entered my driver's license number into his system, and my face and information appeared on the screen. He informed me that destroying a license is a misdemeanor in the state and inquired about who had snapped it. We had a brief conversation, and I noticed a smile forming on his face. He asked if I wanted to press charges, and since I had already missed my first class, I agreed. He instructed me to go along with his plan, and we devised a course of action. By this time, there were 4 squad cars and several police officers present, which caused the customers to grow concerned. Together, we walked back into the store, and I kept my gaze fixed on the floor, projecting a contemplative demeanor. The officer then spoke loudly, drawing everyone's attention, and nudged me to respond. I politely apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry this happened, and I assure you it won't occur again." This elicited chuckles from the clerk and the manager. I continued. The manager instructed the clerk to take my ID, who then snapped it, and it was the manager who threatened someone with arrest. The officer unclasped the handcuffs from his belt and approached the clerk, informing her of her rights according to the Miranda warning. Another officer did the same for the manager. I returned to the register, paid for my items, and left the store. When I shared the police report with my professor, he found it highly amusing and allowed me to present my project later, despite the delay caused by this incident. I worked at a clothing store in a mall for a year and a half. It wasn't the most enjoyable experience, but recently I remembered a satisfying revenge story from my time there. A new girl was hired, and from the start it was clear she had an inflated sense of self-importance. She acted like a manager, boasted about her hours, and constantly bragged about manipulating men into paying for her expenses. She made everyone feel inferior with her condescending attitude. Here's where things took a turn. In our store, the racks were made of expensive and durable milled steel bars and hooks. However, if heavy coats were left hanging on them for extended periods, the bars could bend out of shape. Mrs. Hot Stuff had the bright idea of using the milled steel bars to hang all the coats on a single rack instead of using a circular rack that wouldn't warp. I objected, but she dismissed me, saying, "I get paid more than you, so do what I say." She was hired as a key holder, earning $1 more per hour than me. Reluctantly, I complied with her decision and hung the heavy winter coats on the milled steel rack. 2 weeks later, as expected, the rack was warped. When management discovered the damage, they were furious. To make matters worse, she blamed me for the mishap, and I was given a written warning. Refusing to sign the document, I had my hours reduced, resulting in a significant pay cut. I was livid. It was clear that she had lied, and I was now earning 50% less than before, all while having a formal complaint against me. I was determined to get my revenge. I noticed that the drywall on the center pillars of the store had been damaged by water earlier that year, making them soft and weak. However, these pillars provided a large amount of shelf space, which was currently unusable, accounting for about 20% of the available space. Here's where my plan took shape. Ms. Hot Stuff was oblivious to the damaged pillars since she joined the store a week after the incident. To the casual observer, the pillars seemed fine, as banners were hung to conceal the yellowing. I casually mentioned to her how unfortunate it was that we couldn't use that shelf space, suggesting that a well-designed display there could attract many customers, especially since it was visible from the mall's main floor. We were located near the food court. She was intrigued. The next day, I took a short break and went to a snowy lake cabin. The people she had working with her were either managers or temporary employees who weren't allowed to handle marketing and logistics. Knowing she craved recognition, wanting to prove to the managers from our 3 stores in the mall that her store was the best, I knew she wouldn't want them to see the display until it was complete. Since she was paired with a temporary employee who couldn't assist with shelving, she ended up using milled steel racks attached to the soft drywall pillars to hang the heavy winter clothing. Within a week, the drywall collapsed, damaging $500 worth of product. She attempted to shift the blame onto me, but I was away for the entire week deep in the forest, hundreds of miles from civilization. It was impossible for me to have caused the incident. With no evidence against me, her accusation fell flat, and the management finally realized that her claims were baseless. She was held responsible for the repairs, demoted to a sales associate, and faced consequences for the previous false accusation as well. The repair cost amounted to $2,500 plus an additional $500 for the damaged stock. But I wasn't finished with my revenge. You see, our store manager was a laid-back person and happened to be a personal friend of mine. As I mentioned before, Mrs. Hot Stuff wouldn't stop talking about how she manipulated men for money. She used the group chat to share details of her exploits. Sometimes one of her targets would come by and take her out for lunch. During one of her extended breaks, when she was finishing up some work in the back, I discreetly let these men see the group chat, asking them not to reveal that I had informed them. Many of them were taken aback by the revelations. They would then go on their lunch dates with her, only to break things off after 1 or 2 days upon realizing her true nature. Finally, one of them took her phone, discovered the extent of her manipulations, and messaged all the other guys about her deceitful behavior. Within 2 months, her source of money from these men had completely dried up. Since she had been demoted to a sales associate, she no longer had the funds for her lavish nights out and designer clothing. Eventually, she moved to another store for more hours, but resorted to stealing money from the till, leading to her termination. It was a fitting end to someone who had backstabbed others and treated them poorly. I eventually left that job after another 6 months to pursue my current occupation. My best friend and I, both sons of retired police officers, a highway patrolman and a deputy sheriff, had a memorable experience right after graduating high school 15 years ago. Growing up in a peaceful rural area, we rarely encountered any problems. However, one weekend morning, my friend's family discovered their mailbox smashed and scattered along the road in front of their house. Assuming it was a hit and run, they collected the mail, replaced the mailbox, and carried on with their lives. Surprisingly, the following weekend brought another incident. A few months prior to my friend's dad retiring, he decided to continue working and enrolled in a local trade college to become a certified welder. After the second mailbox incident, my buddy called me over to his house and we all got to work. With my friend and his dad handling the welding and cutting, I took care of grinding, and his talented artist mom contributed with the painting skill. We also acquired 2 bags of cement, 7 feet of steel pipe, and the necessary rebar. You can probably guess what we were up to. We constructed an all-steel reinforced mail bunker, anchoring it with 3.5 feet of concrete and road base. Utilizing her artistic prowess, my friend's mom painted it to resemble a wooden structure, achieving a remarkably realistic look, even up close or at night while driving at 45 miles per hour. After setting up the box, we enjoyed a well-deserved dinner and I headed home. A couple of weeks passed and then it happened. A triumph. Early one Sunday morning, my friend urgently called me and instructed me to come to his house. As I rounded the turn towards their residence, I witnessed the extraordinary sight. A '92 Pontiac Grand Prix mangled around the steel post, nearly reaching the passenger compartment. The car had been abandoned, but all the necessary information for an arrest was conveniently left behind. It took a couple of days to track down the owner, who eventually confessed to the crime. To add insult to injury, we discovered a half-empty bottle of Canadian Host and Cons strewn across the back seat, leading to an open container charge. Along with the cost of towing and the medical bills for the driver's face meeting the steering wheel, the charges for criminal mischief began to accumulate swiftly. Later on, I learned that my friend's mischievous little brother had also seized the culprit's CD book. Recognizing the potential dangers associated with our mail bunker, we decided to repaint it after making necessary adjustments to make it more conspicuous. Now, it's important to provide some context. We were fully aware that our actions could pose risks to others, but we weren't foolish. When we placed the new mailbox and pole, it was well within the boundaries of my friend's property, positioned off the road. Their family owned a farm with ample acreage to spare. His dad, using his tractor, cleared out a significant area, compacted the ground, and added a layer of road base. The bunker was spacious enough for the postal worker to park safely off the road while accessing the mailbox. Furthermore, reaching the family's driveway required navigating a gentle turn. Anyone driving so recklessly as to accidentally hit the mailbox would likely lose control of their vehicle long before they reached it. Assuming people followed the posted speed limit and were not complete jerks, there was no conceivable way to collide with our mailbox unless someone deliberately deviated from their path.